They do not need to defeat you. They only need to trigger you. That is how toxic people take power without ever looking powerful. They say the careless word, send the cold reply, twist your intention, disrespect your boundary, or act like your pain is too much. Then they wait to see what happens inside you. Will you explain again? Will you defend yourself? Will you get angry? Will you send the long message? Will you lose your peace trying to prove that your feelings are real? This is the trap. The moment you react without control, they get access, not just to your words, but to your mood, your focus, your nervous system, your whole inner world. One sentence from them can ruin your day. One look can make you overthink for hours. One accusation can pull you into a conversation you already know will drain you. And somehow they walk away calm while you are left carrying the emotional damage. But listen carefully. The problem is not only what they do. The deeper problem is that your reaction has become available to them. They know which button to press. They know which silence makes you chase. They know which insult makes you defend. They know which tone makes you shrink, explain, or explode. And as long as they can control your reaction, they do not need to control anything else. Stoicism teaches a harder kind of strength. You cannot control toxic people, but you can stop giving them command over your inner state. You cannot always stop the provocation, but you can decide whether it becomes your master. You cannot control their words, their games, their coldness, or their immaturity, but you can control the space between what they do and what you choose next. That space is where your power returns. This episode is not about becoming cold. It is not about pretending nothing hurts. It is not about revenge, silence as punishment, or acting superior. It is about learning how to protect your peace from people who feed on emotional chaos. Because when you stop reacting, they lose the version of you they knew how to control. They lose the anger they expected, the explanation they wanted, the breakdown they could blame, and the access they used to disturb you. When you stop reacting, you are not losing your voice. You are recovering your command. And once they can no longer control your emotions, they can no longer control you. Let's begin. 1. Toxic people feed on your reaction. Some people do not enter your life to understand you. They enter every conversation looking for a reaction. They know the word that makes you defend yourself. They know the silence that makes you anxious. They know the accusation that makes you over-explain. They know the disrespect that pulls anger out of you. And once they get that reaction, they feel powerful, not because they were right, but because they were able to move you. This is what makes toxic people dangerous to your peace. They do not always need to win the argument. They only need to make you lose yourself inside it. They say something sharp, then watch your face change. They send a cold reply, then wait for the long message. They ignore you, then enjoy watching you chase clarity. They twist your words, then act calm while you become frustrated trying to correct the distortion. By the end, they may not have solved anything, but they got what they wanted. Emotional proof that they still have access to you. Your reaction becomes their reward. Your anger tells them they touched the right wound. Your defense tells them they successfully pulled you into their frame. Your panic tells them their distance still controls your nervous system. Your long explanation tells them your peace is still negotiable. This does not mean your feelings are wrong. It means your feelings are being used in the wrong arena. A toxic person often does not want resolution because resolution would end the game. They do not want clarity because clarity would require accountability. They do not want peace because peace gives them no leverage. What they want is movement. They want to see you disturbed. They want to know that one sentence from them can rearrange your mood, your attention, your sleep, and your whole day. That is why reacting too quickly can become a form of surrender. Think about the last time someone provoked you and you answered immediately. Maybe you knew the conversation would go nowhere, but you still entered. Maybe your chest tightened, your mind raced, and before you could think clearly, your fingers were already typing. You explained, defended, corrected, and justified. Then, hours later, you felt drained, embarrassed, or disappointed in yourself. Not because you had no right to feel hurt, but because you gave your energy to someone who was never asking for truth in the first place. This is where Stoicism becomes practical. The Stoic is not someone who cannot be touched. He is someone who notices the touch before becoming its servant. He feels the provocation, but he does not automatically obey it. He understands that another person's behavior is not always the real battlefield. The real battlefield is the moment inside you when emotion asks for control and wisdom asks for command. Epictetus taught that if someone can anger you, they become your master for that moment, not because they own you completely, but because they have taken command of your inner state. That is a hard truth, but it is also freeing, because if your reaction is where they gain power, then your self-control is where that power ends. Here is the practical rule. Do not feed every provocation with immediate emotion. When someone says something designed to disturb you, pause before you answer. Ask yourself, is this person seeking understanding, or are they seeking access to my reaction? That one question can save your peace. If they want understanding, speak calmly. If they want chaos, do not donate your nervous system to their drama. You are not weak because something hurt you. You are human, but you become vulnerable when every hurt turns into an uncontrolled response. Toxic people study reactions. They learn what works. They repeat what gets access. So the moment you stop giving them the reaction they expected, the old power structure begins to collapse. They can still speak. They can still provoke. They can still act cold, unfair, immature, or disrespectful. But if they can no longer pull you out of yourself, their power over you starts dying. Not because they changed, but because you stopped feeding them with the part of you they knew how to control. 2. The real damage is not the argument. It is losing yourself. The argument is rarely the deepest damage. The insult, the cold reply, the accusation, the disrespect, the little game they play to make you react. Those things may start the fire, but they are not always what burns you the most. What burns you is what happens inside you after you enter their chaos. Your chest tightens, your mind races, your tone changes, your dignity starts slipping. You say things you did not want to say. You explain in ways that make you feel smaller. You give hours of your attention to someone who gave you only seconds of provocation. That is the real cost. Toxic people want you to think the battlefield is the conversation. They want you to believe the mission is to win the argument, prove the point, correct the lie, expose the unfairness, and make them finally admit what they did. But while you are trying to win the argument, you may be losing something more important, your inner order. You may win the last word and still lose your peace. You may prove that you were right and still feel ashamed of how far they pulled you from yourself. This is why self-control matters more than victory. A person can bait you into a debate, and even if your logic is perfect, your soul can still leave the conversation disturbed. You replay every sentence. You wonder if you said too much. You feel angry at them, then angry at yourself. You feel the exhaustion of having handed your calm to someone who did not deserve the key. The danger is not only that they upset you, the danger is that they make you abandon your own standard of behavior. Think about how often this happens. Someone makes a disrespectful comment, and suddenly you are speaking in a tone that does not sound like you. Someone lies about your intentions, and suddenly you are desperate to prove your heart to a person who is committed to misunderstanding it. Someone tries to provoke jealousy, fear, guilt, or anger, and suddenly your whole day becomes organized around their behavior. You stop working with focus. You stop resting with ease. You stop being present with people who actually love you because your mind is still trapped in a conflict that may not even matter tomorrow. That is too expensive. The Stoic does not measure strength by how loudly he can respond. He measures it by how little of himself he loses when life provokes him. Anyone can shout when disrespected. Anyone can send the long message while angry. Anyone can punish, insult, expose, or attack back. But it takes real command to feel the heat rise and still protect your character. It takes discipline to say, "This person may be wrong, but I will not let their wrongness make me act beneath myself." This is where many people confuse expression with freedom. They say, "I am just being honest," when they are really being controlled by emotion. They say, "I had to say something," when what they mean is, "I could not tolerate the discomfort of pausing." They say, "I needed to put them in their place," but afterward, their own spirit feels out of place. Not every emotional release is power. Sometimes it is just another form of being controlled. Here is the practical test. After you respond, do you respect yourself more or less? Not did you sound strong, not did you win, not did they go quiet. Ask the harder question. Did my response protect the person I am trying to become? Did it keep me aligned with my values? Did it make the situation clearer, or did it drag me deeper into the mud? If your response gives away your peace, your dignity, and your self-command, then even if you win the argument, you lose the real battle. This does not mean you should let people mistreat you. Stoicism is not passivity. It is not swallowing disrespect and pretending it is wisdom. There are moments when you must speak clearly, set a boundary, correct a lie, or walk away. But the difference is the state you speak from. When you respond from command, your words are clean. When you respond from wounded impulse, your words often become part of the chaos. So before you enter the argument, count the cost. Not just the cost of being silent, but the cost of reacting. Will this conversation take your sleep? Will it poison your focus? Will it make you carry someone else's immaturity into the rest of your day? Will it pull you into a version of yourself you have been working hard to outgrow? Because the real loss is not that someone disrespected you. The real loss is letting their disrespect make you disrespect your own peace. The real loss is not that they acted toxic. The real loss is becoming toxic in response. The real loss is not that they disturbed the room. The real loss is handing them the authority to disturb the person inside you. When you understand this, you stop entering every fight as if your worth depends on the outcome. You stop treating every accusation like a courtroom. You stop letting every provocation become an emergency. You begin to protect something higher than the argument, your character, your calm, your inner command. And once protecting yourself becomes more important than proving yourself, toxic people lose one of their greatest weapons. They can still provoke the moment, but they can no longer make you sacrifice yourself inside it. 3. The Stoic pause. The space where your power returns. There is a moment before you react. It may be small, almost invisible, but it is there. Someone says the thing that cuts you. Someone sends the message that feels disrespectful. Someone twists your intention, ignores your boundary, or speaks to you with that tone that immediately makes your body tighten. In that first second, your old self wants to move. It wants to defend, explain, attack, correct, expose, or send back the same energy. But hidden inside that second is the place where your power returns. Most people lose the battle before they even speak because they do not pause. They feel the emotion rise and treat it like an order. Anger rises, so they answer with anger. Fear rises, so they chase. Guilt rises, so they apologize for something they did not do. Pride rises, so they escalate. The toxic person does not need to be stronger than them. They only need to make them obey the first impulse. That is why the pause is not a small thing. The pause is not weakness. The pause is not hesitation. The pause is your mind stepping between the trigger and your behavior. It is the difference between being moved and choosing movement. It is the moment you stop saying, "They made me react," and start saying, "They tried to provoke me, but I still decide what leaves my mouth, what gets my attention, and what enters my soul." This is the discipline toxic people hate because the pause ruins the automatic pattern. They expected the instant reply. They expected your tone to change. They expected you to defend yourself before thinking. They expected the old nervous system, the old wound, the old urgency. But when you pause, you make the provocation wait outside the gate. You do not deny that it hurt. You do not pretend you are above pain. You simply refuse to let pain become your commander. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That is not a beautiful quote for a notebook. That is a weapon for the exact moment someone tries to drag you out of yourself. You may not control their disrespect. You may not control their coldness. You may not control whether they lie, blame, provoke, or misunderstand you on purpose. But you can control whether their behavior gets immediate access to your hands, your voice, your attention, and your character. The pause gives you time to ask better questions. Not, "How do I hurt them back?" Not, "How do I prove I am right?" Not, "How do I make them finally understand?" Ask instead, "What response protects my peace? What response protects my character? Is this worth entering? Am I about to speak from wisdom or from the wound they just touched?" These questions slow down the old reaction. They put you back in the seat of command. And sometimes the answer is to speak. Stoicism is not silence in every situation. There are moments when you must be direct. There are moments when you must say, "Do not speak to me that way." There are moments when you must correct a lie, set a boundary, end a conversation, or remove access. But even then, the pause matters because it changes the quality of your response. Without the pause, your boundary can sound like panic. With the pause, your boundary sounds like order. Look at the difference. Without the pause, you write a paragraph trying to force someone to respect you. With the pause, you say, "I am not continuing this conversation if it stays disrespectful." Without the pause, you defend every detail to someone committed to twisting you. With the pause, you say, "You are free to see it that way, but I know what I meant." Without the pause, you chase the person who created distance to control you. With the pause, you let distance reveal what words were hiding. That is emotional maturity. It is not about having no reaction. It is about not becoming your reaction. You can feel anger without handing it the microphone. You can feel pain without turning it into a performance. You can feel the urge to answer and still decide that silence is cleaner. You can feel the old wound being pressed and still refuse to live from the old wound. Here is the practical rule. Never respond at the speed of the trigger. If something hits you hard, slow down. Put the phone down. Breathe before typing. Read the message without answering immediately. Let your body calm before your mouth speaks. Give yourself enough time to separate what happened from what your nervous system wants to do about it. A response born from 10 calm minutes will often protect you better than a response born from 10 burning seconds. This will feel unnatural at first because toxic patterns train you to move quickly. They train you to fix tension immediately, explain yourself immediately, defend your name immediately, and reduce someone else's discomfort immediately. But peace requires a different training. Peace requires you to tolerate the discomfort of not reacting. Peace requires you to let the fire burn down before deciding what deserves your words. The more you practice the pause, the less controllable you become. People can still try to trigger you, but they no longer meet an automatic machine. They meet a person who has learned to stand between emotion and action. They meet someone who can feel the insult, recognize the bait, notice the pull, and still choose the higher response. That is where toxic people begin to lose power. Not when they become kinder, not when they finally apologize, not when they stop provoking you. They lose power when their provocation no longer guarantees your reaction. They lose power when you stop moving at the speed of their disturbance. They lose power when the space between what they do and what you choose becomes stronger than the wound they were trying to touch. 4. Separate what happened from what you added to it. A toxic person can disturb you once with what they do, but your mind can keep disturbing you all day with what you add to it. This is one of the most important Stoic lessons for protecting your peace. The event is one thing, your judgment about the event is another. Someone leaves you on read. That is the event. Your mind says, "They are humiliating me. I am not important. I need to prove that I matter." That is the judgment. Someone speaks with a cold tone. That is the event. Your mind says, "They are trying to destroy my confidence. I must defend myself immediately." That is the judgment. Someone criticizes you unfairly. That is the event. Your mind says, "If I do not answer, they win." That is the judgment. And this is where most people lose control. They do not only react to what happened, they react to the story they built around what happened. They react to the meaning their wound created in the moment. They react to the fear behind the event, not the event itself. This is why one sentence can feel like an emergency. It is not just the sentence. It is the memory it touches. It is the insecurity it wakes up. It is the old pattern that says, "You must fix this now, or you will lose something." Toxic people become powerful when they learn which stories already live inside you. If you fear abandonment, their silence becomes a weapon. If you fear being misunderstood, their accusation becomes a trap. If you fear rejection, their distance becomes control. If you fear looking weak, their insult becomes bait. They press the button, but your judgment supplies the electricity. They create the event, but your mind gives it the meaning that burns you. This does not mean you should deny reality. Stoicism is not pretending disrespect is acceptable. It is not saying nothing matters while someone keeps crossing your boundaries. The point is not to excuse what they did. The point is to see clearly before you respond. Clarity says, "This person spoke disrespectfully." Chaos says, "This proves I am worthless, and now I must fight to recover my value." Clarity says, "This conversation is becoming manipulative." Chaos says, "I need to make them admit it right now, or I will not be able to rest." Clarity gives you options. Chaos gives you impulses. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by things themselves, but by the views they take of them. That single idea can change your entire emotional life if you actually practice it, because it means that between the event and your suffering, there is often an interpretation. And if there is an interpretation, there is a place to examine it. There is a place to ask, what exactly happened and what am I adding to it? This question is powerful because toxic people benefit from your confusion. They want you to merge the event with the fear. They want you to feel that their silence means your worth is gone. They want you to feel that their insult means you must defend your identity. They want you to feel that their opinion is now a verdict on your life. But when you separate the event from the judgment, you stop giving them that kind of authority. Imagine someone says, "You are too sensitive." The event is simple. They said a sentence. But your mind may add, "Maybe I am weak. Maybe I should not have spoken. Maybe my feelings are a problem. Maybe I need to explain better so they finally respect me." Now you are not responding to the sentence. You are responding to shame. You are trying to escape the meaning you attached to their words. A clearer response would be, "They called me sensitive because they do not want to deal with the effect of their behavior. I do not need to accept that label as truth." Notice the difference. One interpretation makes you defend your worth. The other protects your peace. Here is the practical rule. Before you respond, name the fact without the story. Say to yourself, "The fact is, they did not reply." Not, "They are trying to make me feel small." Say, "The fact is, they raised their voice." Not, "I am being destroyed." Say, "The fact is, they accused me of something unfair." Not, "I must prove everything immediately." When you name the fact cleanly, you give your nervous system less poison to drink. After naming the fact, ask the second question. What response fits reality, not my fear? Maybe the right response is a calm boundary. Maybe it is silence. Maybe it is distance. Maybe it is one clear sentence. Maybe it is ending the conversation. But at least now you are not acting from the wound. You are acting from judgment that has been examined, not judgment that has hijacked you. This is how you become harder to manipulate, not because you become emotionless, but because you stop letting every event become a personal sentence against you. Someone's coldness does not automatically define your value. Someone's disrespect does not automatically require a performance. Someone's accusation does not automatically place you on trial. Someone's immaturity does not automatically become your emergency. You have to train this. At first, your mind will still jump. It will still add meaning quickly. It will still say, this means they do not care. This means I am losing control. This means I have to answer now. Do not hate yourself for that. The mind is trained by repetition, and if you spent years reacting from old wounds, you will not become calm by wishing for calm. You become calm by interrupting the judgment again and again until your inner world learns a new order. The event touches you once. Your judgment can touch you 100 times. The toxic person may have said one sentence, but your mind may replay it for 3 hours. The toxic person may have sent one cold message, but your interpretation may turn it into a full emotional storm. That is why self-control begins with interpretation. If you cannot control the story you build inside, you will always be vulnerable to people who know how to start the first sentence. So separate what happened from what you added to it. See the event clearly. Examine the meaning carefully. Remove the fear, the pride, the old wound, and the desperate need to prove yourself. Then respond, if a response is needed, from the clean place that remains. Because toxic people lose power when you stop reacting to the stories they trigger inside you and start responding only to reality. 5. Silence is strength. When it is chosen, not forced. Silence is not always strength. Sometimes silence is fear. Sometimes it is avoidance. Sometimes it is the old habit of swallowing pain because you are afraid of conflict. Sometimes it is the quiet suffering of someone who has been trained to believe that speaking up will only make things worse. So do not misunderstand the lesson. Stoicism is not telling you to disappear, suppress everything, and call that wisdom. Silence becomes strength only when it is chosen consciously, from self-command, not from fear. There is a major difference between being unable to speak and choosing not to waste your words. One is weakness wearing a calm face. The other is discipline. If you are silent because you are terrified of their reaction, then they still control you. If you are silent because you do not believe your truth matters, then your silence is not peace. It is self-abandonment. But if you are silent because you can see that the conversation is designed to drain you, twist you, or pull you beneath your character, then silence becomes a boundary. A toxic person wants to make your silence look like defeat. They want you to feel that if you do not answer, you lost. If you do not defend yourself, they won. If you do not correct every lie, their version becomes truth. But this is one of the traps that keeps people emotionally enslaved. You begin to believe every provocation deserves a reply, every accusation deserves a defense, every insult deserves a counterattack, and every misunderstanding deserves an explanation. Soon, your whole life becomes a courtroom where you are constantly proving your innocence to people who were never fair judges. Chosen silence steps out of that courtroom. It says, I know what happened, and I do not need to exhaust myself proving it to someone committed to denying it. It says, I know who I am, and I do not need to answer every person who tries to define me. It says, I can speak, but I will not speak from panic. I can respond, but I will not respond, just because someone tried to command my nervous system. That is strength. Think of the moment someone sends a message clearly meant to provoke you. Maybe it is sarcastic. Maybe it is cold. Maybe it is designed to make you feel guilty. The old reaction says, answer now. Fix this now. Defend yourself now. Do not let them think they got away with it. But the wiser part of you asks, what will this response cost me? Will it bring clarity, or will it feed the same cycle? Am I speaking because truth needs a voice, or because my ego cannot tolerate being misunderstood? That question changes everything. Sometimes the strongest response is one calm sentence. Sometimes it is a clear boundary. Sometimes it is leaving the conversation entirely. And sometimes it is silence, not because you have nothing to say, but because anything you say will be used to continue a game you are trying to leave. Silence becomes powerful when it protects the person you are becoming. The Stoic does not worship silence. He worships character. If speaking protects your character, speak. If silence protects your character, be silent. The standard is not, how do I look powerful? The standard is, what keeps me aligned with wisdom, dignity, and self-control? That is why chosen silence is so different from emotional shutdown. Shutdown says, I cannot handle this. Chosen silence says, I can handle this, but I refuse to handle it in a way that harms me. There is also a silence that comes after you have already spoken enough. You explained once. You set the boundary once. You gave clarity once. You tried to have the honest conversation. And still, they twisted it. Still, they dismissed it. Still, they turned your calm words into another argument. At that point, more talking may not be maturity. It may be the refusal to accept that this person does not want understanding. They want access. They want movement. They want the old version of you who believed every wound had to be explained until the person who caused it finally agreed. But your peace cannot depend on their agreement. Here is the practical rule. Before choosing silence, make sure it comes from command, not fear. Ask yourself, am I silent because I am scared to stand up for myself, or because I have already stood up for myself and this conversation no longer deserves more of me? If it is fear, work toward one clear sentence. If it is command, stay quiet without guilt. You do not need to keep proving a boundary after it has been made clear. This is especially important because toxic people may try to pull you out of chosen silence. They may say, so now you have nothing to say? They may call you immature. They may accuse you of acting superior. They may provoke harder because your calm threatens the old pattern. Do not take the bait. The moment you start defending your silence to someone who wanted your reaction, you have already stepped halfway back into the trap. You do not owe every person a performance of pain. You do not owe every provocation an explanation. You do not owe every distorted story a full emotional defense. There are moments when protecting your character means speaking clearly. There are also moments when protecting your character means letting the noise pass without entering it. Silence is strength when it is chosen by the disciplined part of you. It is strength when it keeps you from becoming cruel. It is strength when it stops you from begging to be understood by a closed mind. It is strength when it allows your dignity to remain untouched by someone else's disorder. It is strength when it says, I could react, but I will not hand over my peace just because you asked for it through disrespect. And when toxic people realize that your silence is not fear, not confusion, not weakness, but command, something changes. They can no longer depend on the old reaction. They can no longer make you prove yourself on demand. They can no longer drag you into the emotional arena whenever they need attention. Your silence becomes a locked door, not because you are empty, but because you have finally learned who no longer deserves access. 6. Stop rewarding drama with your attention. Drama survives because someone keeps feeding it. It does not always need truth. It does not always need logic. It does not even need a real problem. Sometimes drama only needs your attention, your urgency, your defense, your emotional investment, and your willingness to enter a conversation that was designed to disturb you from the beginning. This is why toxic people often create situations that feel unfinished. They make a vague accusation. They send a message with just enough disrespect to make you react, but not enough clarity to solve anything. They give you silence, then return with confusion. They act offended when you set a boundary. They say something indirect, so your mind has to work harder. And before you know it, you are not living your life anymore. You are studying their tone, their timing, their words, their silence, their mood, their hidden meaning. That is attention, and attention is power. Every time you enter unnecessary drama, you are paying with something valuable. You pay with focus. You pay with calm. You pay with sleep. You pay with mental space that could have gone to your work, your body, your family, your future, your healing. And the worst part is that many toxic people do not need you to agree with them. They only need you to stay engaged. Even your anger keeps the connection alive. Even your defense keeps the stage open. Even your attempt to end it properly can become another doorway back into the same cycle. This is the trap of trying to explain yourself to a closed mind. You think one more sentence will create understanding. One more paragraph will finally make them see your intention. One more example will make them admit they crossed the line. But a closed mind does not use your explanation to understand you. It uses your explanation to continue the argument. It searches for a weak phrase, a tone, a detail, a place to twist the subject. You came for clarity. They came for access. So stop rewarding drama with your attention. This does not mean you become rude. It does not mean you ignore serious issues. It does not mean you refuse every hard conversation. Mature people can have difficult conversations without turning them into emotional warfare. But you must learn to recognize the difference between a hard conversation and a toxic loop. A hard conversation may feel uncomfortable, but it moves toward truth. A toxic loop keeps circling the same wound, the same blame, the same confusion, the same pressure, until you are exhausted and nothing is cleaner. The Stoic does not enter every conflict just because conflict invites him. He asks whether the situation deserves his energy. He asks whether his involvement will improve anything or only feed disorder. He understands that attention is a form of life. Wherever you place it, you spend part of your existence there. So when you give hours of your mind to someone who only wants to provoke you, you are not just wasting time. You are giving away pieces of your life. Here is the practical rule. Do not explain deeply to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Do not defend yourself endlessly to people who need you guilty. Do not answer every sarcastic comment, every cold message, every emotional bait, every indirect attack. Some things deserve a clear response. Some things deserve a boundary. Some things deserve no more access. You can say, I am not discussing this while it is disrespectful. You can say, I have already explained my position. You can say, this conversation is no longer useful. You can say nothing and step away. The point is not to sound powerful. The point is to stop donating your peace to a situation that keeps proving it does not respect it. This is hard because drama creates urgency. It makes you feel that if you do not respond now, something will be lost. Your reputation will be damaged. Your side will be misunderstood. They will think they won. They will think you are weak. But ask yourself honestly, how many times did you enter drama to protect your image and leave with less respect for yourself? How many times did you fight to correct someone's opinion and end up carrying their poison for the rest of the day? Not every opinion about you deserves a defense. Not every accusation deserves a trial. Not every disrespect deserves your emotional participation. Sometimes the most disciplined thing you can do is let the noise remain noise. Let the false version remain outside you. Let the person who wants chaos sit with the chaos alone. This is where emotional boundaries become practical. A boundary is not only what you tell people, it is what you stop entertaining. It is what you stop reading twice. It is what you stop replying to at midnight. It is what you stop explaining after the explanation has already been given. It is what you stop letting into your nervous system just because someone else is careless with their words. If you keep rewarding drama, drama will keep finding you. If every provocation earns a long reply, the provocation learns that it works. If every cold silence makes you chase, the silence learns that it controls you. If every insult makes you lose your center, the insult becomes a key. Toxic people repeat what gets access. So when you remove attention, you remove the reward. And this is when they begin to lose power. Not because you defeated them in argument, not because you exposed them, not because you made them regret everything. They lose power because their drama no longer receives your life as payment. They can still create noise, but you no longer treat noise as a command. They can still throw bait, but you no longer turn every bait into a battle. Your peace becomes expensive. Your attention becomes selective. Your energy becomes guarded. And once drama no longer gets rewarded with your reaction, toxic people are left with the one thing they were trying to avoid, their own disorder, without your participation. 7. Emotional neutrality is stronger than revenge. Revenge can feel powerful in the moment, but it is often just another form of being controlled. Someone hurts you, disrespects you, plays with your emotions, or tries to make you look weak. And the first instinct is to make them feel what they made you feel. You want to answer with sharper words. You want to expose them. You want to withdraw in a way that makes them panic. You want them to regret, suffer, miss you, or finally understand the weight of what they treated carelessly. That desire is human, but it is not freedom. Revenge keeps them important. Even if you look strong on the outside, your inner world is still organized around their reaction. You are still asking, did I hurt them back? Did they notice? Are they bothered? Do they regret it now? That means they are still at the center. They still have your attention. They still control the emotional direction of your day. You may not be chasing their love anymore, but now you are chasing their discomfort. The shape changed, but the attachment remained. Emotional neutrality is different. Neutrality does not mean you approve of what happened. It does not mean you excuse toxic behavior. It does not mean you become numb, cold, or passive. Emotional neutrality means their behavior no longer decides the condition of your soul. They can provoke, but you do not immediately burn. They can accuse, but you do not immediately collapse into defense. They can disrespect, but you do not become obsessed with making them pay. You see the behavior clearly, respond if needed, protect your boundary, and return to yourself. That is stronger than revenge because revenge still needs the other person. Neutrality does not. A toxic person may understand anger. They may understand punishment. They may understand emotional games, silence used as a weapon, and words designed to cut. But they often do not know what to do with someone who stops giving them emotional importance. They are prepared for your explosion, not your steadiness. They are prepared for your pain, not your self-command. They are prepared for a fight, not a person who calmly refuses to let the situation lower his character. This is where the Stoic lesson becomes serious. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." That line is not soft. It is one of the hardest disciplines in life. When someone is cruel, do not become cruel just to feel equal. When someone is manipulative, do not become manipulative and call it justice. When someone is toxic, do not let their toxicity reproduce itself inside you. If their behavior turns you into a smaller version of yourself, then they have affected you more deeply than you think. The goal is not to make them hurt. The goal is to remain uncorrupted. Think about the difference between revenge and neutrality in a real situation. Revenge says, "I will ignore them so they feel anxious." Neutrality says, "I will not engage because this connection is unhealthy." Revenge says, "I will post something to show them I do not care." Neutrality says, "I do not need to perform my healing for an audience." Revenge says, "I want them to know they lost me." Neutrality says, Whether they understand the loss or not, I am still choosing peace. One is still speaking to them emotionally. The other has returned to itself. This is why emotional neutrality is so difficult. It does not give the ego the quick reward it wants. Anger gives energy. Revenge gives a sense of movement. Drama gives a temporary feeling of importance. But neutrality asks you to sit with the wound without turning it into a weapon. It asks you to protect your boundary without poisoning your character. It asks you to let someone be wrong without becoming obsessed with proving it to them. That takes more strength than a clever insult ever could. Here is the practical rule. Do not make revenge your recovery plan. If your next move is designed mainly to create a reaction in them, pause. If your silence is designed to punish, pause. If your words are designed to wound, pause. If your boundary is secretly a performance, pause. Ask yourself, would I still make this choice if they never saw it, never regretted it, and never reacted? If the answer is yes, you are probably acting from self-respect. If the answer is no, you may still be acting from attachment. This question will expose you, but it will also free you, because many people think they have moved on when they have only changed the form of dependence. They no longer need the person's affection, but they need the person's regret. They no longer need their attention, but they need their jealousy. They no longer need the relationship, but they need the final scene where they look powerful and the other person looks defeated. That is not healing. That is ego asking for applause. Emotional neutrality removes the audience. It says, I do not need you to suffer for me to be free. It says, I do not need to become cruel to prove I was hurt. It says, I do not need your regret to confirm that I had value. It says, I will not let what you did become the reason I abandon the person I am trying to become. This does not mean you should be available. Neutrality can still walk away. Neutrality can still block, end the conversation, reduce access, say no, or refuse to continue a relationship. But it does these things cleanly. It does not stay emotionally tied to the outcome. It does not keep checking whether the boundary hurt them. It does not turn discipline into a hidden revenge campaign. It protects peace, then moves forward. That is when toxic people lose a deeper kind of power. They may still dislike you. They may still lie about you. They may still try to provoke you. But they can no longer make you organize your life around their emotional consequences. They can no longer turn you into a person who acts against his own values. They can no longer make you carry their disorder as your identity. Revenge says, you hurt me, so now I must hurt you. Neutrality says, you hurt me, so now I must protect myself without becoming like you. One keeps the chain alive, the other breaks it. So do not aim to be feared. Aim to be free. Do not aim to make them regret. Aim to make your soul clean again. Do not aim to win the emotional game. Aim to become unavailable to the game itself. Because the moment you no longer need revenge, no longer need their reaction, and no longer need their pain to balance yours, you have reached a strength toxic people cannot understand and cannot control. 8. Respond only when it protects your character. Not every situation deserves your response. This is one of the hardest lessons to accept because the ego wants to answer everything. It wants to correct every lie, defend every intention, punish every insult, explain every silence, and make sure no one walks away thinking they had power over you. But the more you live this way, the more your life becomes a reaction to other people's disorder. You stop choosing your words from wisdom and start spending them wherever someone successfully provokes you. A response should not be automatic. A response should be earned by the situation. Before you speak, before you type, before you defend yourself, ask a better question. Will this response protect my character, or will it only satisfy my emotion? That question separates strength from impulse. Because sometimes the response that feels powerful in the moment is the one that weakens you afterward. It gives your anger a voice, but it takes your peace as payment. It makes you sound strong, but leaves you feeling controlled. Toxic people want you to respond from the lowest part of yourself. They want the angry version, the desperate version, the defensive version, the version that says too much and then regrets it later. They want you to enter the conversation in a state where you are easier to twist, because when you respond from emotion, your words become less precise. Your tone becomes easier to attack. Your pain becomes easier to dismiss. Suddenly, the subject is no longer what they did. The subject becomes how you reacted. This is why character must become your filter, not pride, not revenge, not the need to win. Character. If your response makes you dishonest, do not send it. If it makes you cruel, do not send it. If it makes you beg for basic respect, do not send it. If it turns you into the same kind of energy you are trying to escape, do not send it. A response that damages your character is too expensive, even if it feels justified. This does not mean you never speak. There are times when silence would be avoidance. There are moments when your character requires a clear boundary. There are moments when you must say, "Do not speak to me like that." There are moments when you must correct something false, end a conversation, refuse manipulation, or make your position known. But the difference is this: you do not speak because you were triggered. You speak because your values require clarity. That is a completely different kind of response. An impulsive response says, "I need you to feel my anger." A disciplined response says, "I need to protect my boundary." An impulsive response says, "I cannot let you think you won." A disciplined response says, "Your opinion does not decide my peace." An impulsive response tries to control the other person's reaction. A disciplined response tries to keep your own soul in order. One is controlled by the outside, the other is governed from within. Here is the practical standard. Respond only when your words are calm, necessary, and aligned. Calm does not mean emotionless. It means you are not being driven like an animal by the first wave of anger. Necessary means the response actually serves something useful, not just your urge to release pressure. Aligned means your words match the person you are trying to become. If one of these is missing, pause. If all three are missing, walk away. Imagine someone accuses you unfairly. The old version of you may write a long defense, explaining every detail, proving every intention, trying to force them to see your heart. But if this person has already shown that they twist your explanations, a better response may be simple: "That is not accurate, and I am not going to argue about it." That sentence protects your character. It is clear without being desperate. It is firm without being cruel. It gives truth without giving your nervous system away. Imagine someone disrespects you in a conversation. The old version of you may attack back. You may want to match their tone, make them feel small, show them that you can be sharper. But if you become disrespectful because someone disrespected you, they have successfully lowered you. A cleaner response would be, "I will continue this conversation when it is respectful." Then stop. No lecture, no performance, no emotional speech. Just a boundary that protects the person you are becoming. This is what toxic people often cannot handle. They can handle your anger because anger keeps you in the arena. They can handle your long explanations because explanations keep you available. They can handle your defensiveness because defensiveness puts them in the judge's chair. But a calm, necessary, aligned response gives them very little to use. It does not give them chaos. It does not give them weakness. It does not give them a version of you that can be pulled apart. The Stoic does not ask, "How do I look in this moment?" He asks, "What kind of person am I becoming through this moment?" That is the deeper question. Every provocation is training. Every disrespect is training. Every unfair accusation is training, not because you deserved it, but because it gives you a chance to practice command under pressure. Anyone can be calm when no one is testing them. The real test is whether you can remain ordered when someone tries to pull disorder out of you. So do not waste your voice proving yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Do not spend your words trying to win emotional games that should never have had access to your life. Do not confuse replying with strength. Sometimes strength is one clear sentence. Sometimes strength is a boundary. Sometimes strength is silence. Sometimes strength is leaving before your character starts paying for someone else's immaturity. Before your next response, stop and ask, is this going to make me respect myself tomorrow? That is a simple question, but it cuts through the fog. Not, will they finally understand? Not, will this make them regret it? Not, will I win? Ask, will I respect the way I handled myself? If the answer is no, then the response may satisfy your wound, but it will not serve your life. When you respond only from character, toxic people lose the easiest route into your mind. They can no longer provoke you into becoming someone you are not. They can no longer make your emotions speak before your wisdom arrives. They can no longer drag your name, your peace, and your dignity into every arena they build. You become selective. You become steady, you become difficult to move, and that is the final power. Not that no one can hurt you, not that nothing affects you, but that even when something affects you, it does not automatically control you. You choose what deserves your words. You choose what deserves your silence. You choose what deserves distance. You choose what protects your character. And once your response belongs to your values instead of their provocation, toxic people lose the power they once had over you. Conclusion: when they cannot move you, they cannot own you. When you stop reacting, you are not becoming weak. You are becoming harder to control. You are no longer the person who can be pulled into chaos by one cold message, one disrespectful tone, one accusation, one silence, or one emotional game. You are no longer handing your nervous system to people who never earned that kind of access. You are learning that peace is not protected by controlling everyone around you. Peace is protected by commanding what happens inside you. Toxic people lose power when they lose your automatic reaction. They may still provoke, they may still twist, they may still try to make you defend yourself, explain yourself, doubt yourself, or lower yourself. But when your response becomes slower, cleaner, and more disciplined, their old methods stop working. They expected anger. You gave them pause. They expected panic. You gave them distance. They expected a long emotional performance. You gave them one clear boundary or no access at all. This is not about pretending nothing hurts. Things will still hurt. Words will still cut. Disrespect will still feel heavy. Betrayal, manipulation, and unfairness will still test your heart. Stoicism is not the death of feeling. It is the training of response. It is the moment you say, I feel this, but I will not be ruled by it. I see what they are doing, but I will not become what they are doing. I can be hurt and still remain under my own command. That is the real victory. Not revenge, not proving yourself, not winning every argument, not forcing toxic people to admit what they did. The real victory is leaving the situation with your character intact. It is being able to look back and say, they tested me, but they did not own me. They provoked me, but they did not shape me. They tried to pull disorder out of me, but I chose discipline. So protect the pause. Guard your attention. Separate the event from the story. Stop rewarding drama with your energy. Use silence when silence protects your character. Use words when words are necessary, calm and aligned. And above all, remember that your emotions are valuable. Do not leave them in the hands of people who only know how to use them against you. No one truly controls you until they can control your emotions. No one truly owns your peace until you hand them the key through reaction. And the day you stop reacting to every provocation is the day you begin to take that key back. When you stop reacting, you do not lose your power. You recover it. You recover your mind, your dignity, your focus, your sleep, your self-respect, and your command. And once they can no longer move you from the inside, they can no longer control you from the outside.